Avril, nice to see you again.
Hi, Jacqui. Yeah, lovely to see you, dear. Lovely day, huh?
Doing this is because I know we had a conversation the other day. Being a laser therapist and a thermographer, I'm getting random calls from new clients telling me they've got problems with their dogs. Firstly, because they're walking young dogs too much, and also elderly dogs too much, because everyone's using, well, not everyone, but a lot of the dogs are being used as an excuse to get out. And also, when I do walk my own dogs and I see families out walking, I can look at them, and they're people that I normally would bump into with maybe one dog and one owner. They're now 4 or 5 in a family and still this little dog. And they seem confused. The dogs seem confused as to who they're supposed to be responding to. Is that a problem? Really, if they're used to one owner walking them and then suddenly 24/7, they have this big group with them all the time, does it change their behaviour? Is it something that they just fit into because they live with these people some of the time? I don't know. You tell me. I've just seen a completely different dynamic on a lot of the dog's behaviour.
I think so, Jacqui. I think there's probably, unwittingly, there's probably quite a lot of confusion going on in the dogs' minds because of that. I think it happens in families generally. I think it's probably one of the hardest things for humans to accept, because when a dog's in a family, everybody wants their bit, don't they? They all want to get involved, especially when it's a puppy. Everybody wants a piece of the action. And dogs do really look to one leader, and certainly one leader to be trained by. Now, if it's a really well-trained dog that understands clear commands and clear signals, and then somebody else joins in with similar commands and signals, then that will transfer across quite readily. But if both people are then present and both are giving the dog commands, then that is a complete head mess for the dogs. And I don't think people always really appreciate that. I think animals can end up being treated a little bit like a toy in families, rather than as a little sentient being that has a spirit and a will of its own. I don't think it's done with any sense, nobody means to be cruel to them, but I think and dogs are amazing at coping with all those factors, but sometimes they're not. Some dogs would find that much easier than others.
I mean, a typical example for me is I've got a German Shepherd, and they're very protective, and I know that when I walk her with my grandchildren, which obviously I'm not doing at the moment, she is a little bit more stressed because she wants to round us up and look after us. And that's what I think I've noticed, ironically, more so in the bigger breed dogs. They seem to want to round everybody up. And when you've got a family and the kids are running one way and the adults are another way, the dogs seem either overexcited or slightly stressed that they can't round their group up and keep them in the sort of size group that they want them to.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with a German Shepherd, I mean, the clue's in the name, isn't it? Shepherd. They are a shepherding dog, and they're very good, like the Border Collie, at herding everyone and anything. I mean, we've all seen demonstrations at country fairs, well, not this year, obviously, of dogs herding sheep, geese, cows, ducks, you name it, and you'll find a dog will herd it if it possibly can. And they will herd their humans. I mean, even one human can be herded by a dog. I mean, how many times would your German Shepherd, if you were on your own, circle you? That's one of their favourite tricks. Yeah, is to go around you, and that's the herding. And then, of course, you've got more people there, and the circle just gets bigger, doesn't it?
So can you see potential problems when we're eventually let out and normality, or some sort of normality, comes into force, whereby do you think most of them will just automatically go back to being quite happy with the one owner, or will that owner then potentially have problems with their behaviour? Or
I think in terms of everyone having a dip in the pie and then it going back to one person, I think the only downside of that would be, you know, if somebody would have walked my dogs for a few days, my guess is if I then, I mean, I'm particularly tuned into them as a dog trainer, but if somebody was to walk my dogs for a few days and then I took them out, I would immediately spot some sort of little weakness in their response to me, because whoever's been walking them wouldn't necessarily have backed up what they asked for, or made sure it happened, or maybe rewarded or encouraged them at the right time. And so inevitably the training would have gone backwards. It's like any time a dog is behaving really well for a few days, inevitably what happens, people stop doing the stuff that got it trained. And therefore, before you know it, it's only a dog after all, and it's still learning. So rather like anybody, if you're not being taught, you slide back a little bit, or they start to interpret it their own way and can go backwards. So inevitably they get worse, but at the same time, people's expectations are now that much higher. So that can end up causing quite a lot of friction, because the dog slides backwards and yet they were performing well, and the people start questioning that rather than going, well, hang on a minute, maybe I just need to remind the dogs what's required. And I think that's what could potentially happen when the one person who usually takes responsibility becomes the main walker again, is they've got to remember what all that good stuff they did to get the dog in the good place to start with, and remind the dog, rather than be cross or frustrated with the dog, remember that it's had this huge extra strain put on it of trying to translate everyone's needs, everyone's emotional needs.
I do bump into quite a lot when I walk, and I see her out all the time on her own. She is now walked, she's got 3 children. And she was the one that really put this into my mind, because she's got a spaniel, beautiful spaniel, very well behaved. But she did say to me earlier in the week, the dog won't do anything now. When I'm with my family, it doesn't recall, it just runs. It's having a wonderful time. This dog isn't stressed, but she has it's not taking notice of her at all. And this particular dog is so well behaved usually. You know, she can get it to lay, sit, and do all the good things if anyone's coming past. But now it's not doing anything.
And I think that's a really good point, Jacqui, because I think what's potentially happening there, one or two things. It might be that because she's been walking with them for a few weeks now, her attention's going to be more on them and the kids than it is on the dog. So, you know, she was probably in the early weeks, the dog probably was behaving fine. But of course, if you take your hand off the pulse for long enough, they're going to start misbehaving. Or maybe it's just you call them, but because the kids are there, you don't follow it up, or, you know, she won't be being how she normally is on a walk. So inevitably the training goes backwards. Plus, of course, the dog's distracted by all those new people. You know, it makes the environment very new and very different. And when the environment changes tremendously, it is like the dog's learning all over again.
And that I found really interesting, because it's almost like we think, well, we've trained this dog, the dog knows what to do. And you're now saying that really the training is continually an ongoing thing. Yeah. It isn't, you train your dog and that's it, is it? It's a continual building of it. And I think a lot of people, probably myself included, would think, well, I've trained that dog, it should be able to do that. I think it's quite easy not to consider the environment when that changes, how it affects the dogs. I mean, certainly environment changes us. With the lockdown, it's changed all of our perspective on things and how we feel, and I suppose made some of us anxious, which leads me on. I know you are doing a separation anxiety Zoom meeting for people that are concerned about their dog. So I don't want to touch on that too much, other than to say I'm aware that a lot of people, when they go back to work, these dogs are, you know, left for some considerable amounts of time. Some dogs are left all day and a walker come in and walk them. Can you see problems occurring when people do go back to work because they've had the company 24/7 of maybe a whole family? And not
completely, Jacqui, I think, yeah.
Isn't it?
Sorry, that bit broke up on me. Say again.
Long time, 7 weeks. They've had family 7 weeks, and then in however many weeks' time, when people can go back to work and the dogs are left, can you foresee that being a problem?
I believe so. I think it's probably one of the, well, I think there's two factors involved with people going back to work. One is the dogs have been walked loads and are going to be super fit. And like any athlete, you know, they really need, you know, if there is a period, imagine there's going to be a period as we come out of lockdown, hopefully of 2 or 3 weeks, because I think businesses have got to prepare for people going back to work, where we can start to tail off the exercising, the amount of exercise the dogs are getting in order to bring their fitness level down a little bit before we go back to that more sedentary lifestyle for them. And also at the same time, in terms of the separation anxiety, I think, you know, the way to check if your dog's got it is try shutting it in a room on its own and seeing if it can be quiet for a couple of hours and not worry. You know, if you can shut it in the kitchen and go off up to your bedroom or into your living room, you know, even though you're in the house and the dog's totally aware of you in the house, if you can shut it in another room and it will settle down quite happily, then your dog is well prepared for you going back to work again. And by doing that for a couple of hours every day, you can help prepare it more. But if you do that and the dog can't cope, then I'd say you need to come to the workshop or you need some help. Because if not, when you go back to work, you're going to be stressing all day about leaving your dog who's stressed at being left.
And I'm assuming then that if you do have a dog that is suffering with anxiety, it's going to manifest itself in different ways in each dog.
Yes, good point. It can manifest itself through noise, you know, barking, howling, crying, whimpering. It can, some dogs will just sit and dribble. I mean, that's really quite sad when they just sit and they'll just end up sitting in a little pool of dribble. Or they'll start chewing things up or getting distracted. Even chewing themselves, which is quite grim, but, you know, they'll start worrying at their toes and before you know it, it's, you know, they can actually really get into it and hurt themselves. And lastly, I guess, would be toileting. You know, a lot of people think, oh, he's toileted because he's getting his own back because I went out. Well, they're toileting because they're anxious and anxiety makes our bladder and bowels work. And the same as the dogs. And so they're likely to wee or poo. So if you've got any one of those symptoms when you shut the dog in the room on its own, it's not happy to just lay down and go to sleep, then you've got a problem.
So when these dogs manifest in different ways, with the workshop that you're doing, is that something that you can help people with the different types of problems that they could, I mean, I'm assuming the best thing to do is to deal with it before it happens, preparedness for what potentially may happen is the answer rather than wait until it does.
Absolutely. I mean, once people are back at work, it's going to be, I find it really hard when clients come to me who are at work and have got a problem because, you know, to go to work and leave them when they've got separation anxiety is just horrible for the owners as well as the dog. And right now, while people are still at home, you can actually prepare them. You can actually train them ready so that when you go back to work, neither of you are going to be stressed about it. And it could be an easy transition, you know, it doesn't have to be painful. And yes, on the workshop, we'll deal with all the potential behaviours, the ways in which dogs respond, because interestingly enough, unlike a lot of behaviours with separation anxiety, the methods are exactly the same, whatever the response the dog's giving. So, because we're dealing with anxiety, it's just how the anxiety pops out is you know, different, and it can mean, depending how it's manifesting, I guess it can make it a little harder or a little slower to fix. but essentially the methodology is very similar. It's just you might do it in a slightly different time frame. But the plan is on the workshop to look at all of the reasons why, how it manifests, and then how we fix it. And as I do with all the workshops, that when the owners leave the workshop, they're going to send me an action plan of what they intend to do to fix it, because I want everyone to know what to do when they go away. And of course, I'm at the end of the phone or the WhatsApp group or whatever it is that for ongoing help and support if required or as needed.
First-hand experience, having done the barking work that you did. My shepherd has decided to bark more since lockdown, but I think that's predominantly because there are far more dogs around, and you identified for me that really I wasn't quick enough on the mark recalling her back, and I've really tried to put that into force this week, and it's made a difference. It's made me aware of what I need to do, as opposed to I do feel that her problem was me not reacting quickly enough. So, you know, I say to you that your workshop was amazing. I mean, it's made me more aware of what I need to be doing. And it does sound as if the same is going to apply for the separation anxiety. So when is your workshop, and how do people get onto it, or if they're interested, contact you or whatever?
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Jacqui. The workshop, it was going to be tomorrow, but I've rescheduled it for next Friday because it's the E-Day tomorrow. So the workshop is on May the 15th. It's from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And all you need is to download the Zoom app. And if you can contact me direct via thedogcalmer.com or my website or Facebook. There is a direct link on Facebook to buy tickets. The ticket is £25 per person or per household, I should say. So just click the link and buy your ticket, and I hope to see you there. And I'll also, when this is posted, beneath it so that people go straight.
I can't urge people enough to think about it before the incident happens, before they've got a major problem. But
yeah, because it's so much stress that can be so painlessly avoided. You know, separation anxiety to me is one of those things that is the manifestation is dramatic in some cases and quite horrid. You know, I've lived with a dog that's completely wrecked my house because of separation anxiety. I've seen that happen with clients, and when I've helped people through it, which I can now, luckily, most people are like, "Oh, I wished I'd done this so much sooner," because it doesn't hurt them or you. You know, the method is so gentle, it's so progressive, and so readily available to everybody. You just need the knowledge.
Yeah, and to be aware that you need it.
Yes. Yes, to know what's going on, to know it's gone wrong. Yeah, absolutely, Jack. Yeah.
That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you for that. And I'm sure we'll speak again soon about another interesting point, and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, I look forward to that very much. I'll just end the recording, shall I?